morning sun cast long shadows over Nyarukunda, a village where wealth and poverty lived side by side. Pastor Mackenzie and his family lived in a grand house near the church, while on the other side of the village, Benjamin's home told a different story. Benjamin sat outside their small house, staring at the empty kraal where their only cow had once stood. His father, Maxwell Younger, had sold it the night before to buy alcohol. Benjamin clenched his fists. That cow had been his hope to start a cattle fattening business. Maxwell had once been a respected bus conductor, waking up early to provide for his family. But when he lost his job after an accident, everything changed. He found comfort in the bottle, and soon, the family's savings vanished like morning mist. Now Benjamin was the man of the house. While other boys his age played soccer after school, Benjamin worked. He planted tomatoes, onions, and cabbages, selling them to hotels and supermarkets. Some nights he studied under a dim lantern, refusing to let poverty steal his dreams. But the village never let him forget who he was. "Poor boy," they whispered. "His father drinks too much. No girl will ever marry him." Maria was the daughter of Pastor Mackenzie. She had just finished her A-levels from a very prestigious school in Marondera. She was a very kind girl who had done so much charity, work for her church in the community, and even for her school. One Sunday after church, Benjamin stood by the gate, waiting for her. When she walked past, he cleared his throat. "Maria, can I talk to you?" She turned surprised. "About what?" Benjamin swallowed hard. "I'd like to take you out sometime." Maria stared at him, then laughed in disbelief. "Do you even hear yourself?" she scoffed. "Benjamin, you are a very nice guy, smart, hard-working, and very intelligent, but you don't belong in my world. My father is Pastor Mackenzie, and you're just a poor village boy with no future." "I'm sorry, Benjamin, I can't." Her words cut deep, but Benjamin refused to show it. "I may not have much now," he said, meeting her gaze without fear, "but I work hard. One day I'll be somebody." Maria shook her head. "Keep dreaming, Benjamin." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. Benjamin watched her go, his fists tightening. If there was one thing he knew, it was this. He would never beg for love. He picked up his fractured ego and walked away. "One day we will see," he whispered to himself, his voice full of pain and determination. The sun blazed over Nyarukunda, baking the earth dry. Benjamin wiped sweat from his brow, standing in the middle of his small farm. Rows of green vegetables stretched before him, a result of months of hard work. He didn't have wealth or privilege, but he had two strong hands, and that was enough. As he picked fresh tomatoes and cabbages, he thought about Maria's words. "You don't belong in my world." A small smile crossed his lips. Let her think that. He loaded his baskets and crates into the truck. With the help of other men, he had hired and set off to the city, where he would make deliveries to his growing loyal clients. On the way, he passed Pastor Mackenzie's mansion. The gates were tall and golden, a sign of wealth and power. Maria stood at the balcony watching him. For some reason, she felt uneasy. Yes, Benjamin was poor, but something about him, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence, it made her feel uneasy. As for a girl like, guys were chasing after her, but Benjamin was different. Maria frowned. Why wasn't he hurt? Why wasn't he chasing after her like other village boys? She quickly brushed the thought away. He was nothing. In the city, Benjamin's vegetables were highly sought after. Hotel owners praised his fresh produce, and supermarkets placed bulk orders. The money started coming in, but Benjamin never changed. He still wore his worn-out clothes, still walked with purpose. One day, as he arranged vegetables at the local market, a familiar voice interrupted him. "Selling vegetables now, Benjamin?" He turned and saw Kafasi, the son of Jaracha, the powerful businessman. Kafasi was everything Benjamin wasn't. Spoiled, arrogant, dressed in the latest fashion. He leaned against a wooden stall, laughing with his friends. "How much for a cabbage?" Kafasi smirked, pulling out a bundle of clean $100 bills. "Or should I just buy your entire business?" His friends burst into laughter. Benjamin didn't react. He simply wiped his hands on his trousers and looked Kafasi straight in the eye. "I don't sell to people like you." The laughter stopped. Kafasi's smile vanished. "People like me?" he repeated, stepping forward. "Do you know who my father is?" Benjamin didn't blink. "Yes, and I know what he does." For a moment, Kafasi seemed startled. Then he grinned mockingly. "Big words for a poor village boy," he said. "But let me give you some advice. Stay in your lane. Some of us are born to rule and others are born to serve." Benjamin picked up a knife and sliced a cabbage in half. "Let's see where we all end up." Kafasi scoffed and walked away, but something about Benjamin unsettled him. The village boy wasn't afraid, and that was dangerous. The sun rose over Nyarukunda, casting a golden glow over the hills and small farms. It was a day of excitement, tension, and silent competition. Word had spread across the village that United Nations was looking for peer educators, young people with a passion for community work. Those selected would undergo training, travel, and work on international projects. At the local church hall, young men and women lined up, portfolios in hand. Inside, Maria sat in a white dress, carefully reviewing her submission. Her portfolio was impressive. She had organized church youth programs, helped set up charity drives, and worked with women's empowerment groups. Across the room, Kafasi lounged in a chair, flipping through his glossy application file. He had zero community work, but his father's friend, Pastor Mackenzie, had promised him that he would make the cut. These officials already know who's getting in. Kafasi whispered to his friend, "You think they'll ignore the mighty Jericho's son?" The other rich youths laughed, nodding in agreement. Benjamin, wearing a simple blue shirt, quietly handed in his handwritten application. Unlike the others, he had no expensive pictures, no flashy layout, just proof of real work. His horticulture project that supplied hotels and supermarkets. His work in cleaning up polluted areas in the village. His mentorship programs for orphaned boys. His fundraising efforts for struggling school children. The church elders glanced at his basic submission and shook their heads. "Poor boy," one muttered. "He tried, but this is beyond him." The applications were sent off. There was massive assessment of the said projects that the candidates had provided. Many people, including Benjamin, had forgotten about the peer educators thing. The entire village gathered at the soccer grounds. The UN officials had returned, ready to announce the chosen peer educators. Kafasi, dressed in designer shoes, stood near the front with a smug smile. Benjamin, standing at the back, folded his arms, knowing what people expected, that he would fail. The lead UN official stepped forward. "After reviewing hundreds of applications, we have selected only 2 individuals from Nyarukunda." A heavy silence fell. "The successful candidates are Maria Mackenzie and Benjamin Jonga." Gasps filled the crowd. Kefasi froze, his mouth slightly open. Maria's eyes widened in disbelief. Benjamin's heart pounded, but he remained calm. The UN official continued, ignoring the murmurs. "These 2 have demonstrated exceptional commitment to their communities. They will be trained and later travel for national meetings." The elders clapped. Some youths cheered, but others whispered. Shocked that Benjamin, the poor boy, had won, Maria's heart raced as she walked forward. She had spent her life among the rich and powerful. How had Benjamin, a boy she had once dismissed, beaten them all? She stole a glance at him. Something about him was different now. The bright lights of Harare dazzled Benjamin as he stepped off the bus, surrounded by tall buildings, busy streets, and people in suits and ties rushing in every direction. Maria, standing next to him in an elegant blue dress, looked completely at ease. "This is where we belong." "Ben," she whispered. "Not in a dusty village." Benjamin said nothing. He wasn't here for luxury. He was here to learn and prove himself. The National Peer Educators Conference, inside the massive conference hall, over 100 young leaders from different provinces gathered. The hall was decorated with UN banners, and at the front sat officials from international organizations. A sense of importance filled the air. Benjamin and Maria found their seats as a high-ranking UN official took the stage. "We are here to empower the next generation of African leaders," he began. "But among all these talented young people, we have seen 2 individuals who have demonstrated exceptional leadership, innovation, and passion for community work." The room fell silent. The official continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. "That is why today we proudly announce that the national chairperson and the vice for the UN peer educators are..." A pause. Maria sat up straighter, expecting to hear her name. "The second one, who would be the vice chairperson, is Nompumelelo Nkube." There were applauses and then silence as Nompumelelo walked to the podium, majestically like a true Ndebele princess. "Then the overall best candidate is..." There was silence of anticipation. "Benjamin Jonga!" The hall erupted in applause and gasps. Benjamin's mind went blank. Him? He could see Maria's face freeze in shock. Kefasi, who had traveled with his father as a guest, looked like he had been punched in the gut. Maria had expected to be the best. Kefasi had expected one of the rich kids to win. But Benjamin Jonga, the boy from Nyarukunda, had beaten them all. Benjamin's speech, a UN official nudged him forward. Benjamin stepped onto the stage, adjusting the microphone. He looked at the faces before him, some applauding, others still in disbelief. For a moment he thought of his father, who had lost his job and drowned in alcohol. He thought of the cow he had to sell just to pay for his alcohol debts. He thought of the mockery, the rejections and the struggles. Then he spoke. "I never thought I'd be standing here today." The room fell silent. "I come from a small village where people told me I would never make it. I grew up knowing that success was only for the wealthy, for the powerful, for the connected." He took a deep breath. "But I am proof that hard work, resilience, and a heart for people can change destinies." Applause erupted. Maria watched him in awe. She had once dismissed him as beneath her, but standing there, with the entire nation's eyes on him, he looked powerful, confident, unstoppable. The making of leaders, the National Peer Educators Training had officially begun. A group of 100 young leaders from across the country gathered in Harare, were preparing for a journey that would take them to different countries and communities. For the next 4 weeks, they would learn about community development, public speaking, crisis management, and leadership. Each day started at 5 a.m. with fitness training, followed by lectures, workshops, and debates. The program was intense, designed to build discipline, intelligence, and resilience. But one person stood out: Benjamin Yonga. Within days, Benjamin had proven himself exceptional. He was quick to understand complex topics. He spoke with wisdom and confidence beyond his age. He was hardworking, often staying up late to read extra materials. He led discussions, and even the trainers were impressed by his thoughtful insights. Other trainees, some from elite families, others from rural areas, admired and respected him. People wanted to partner with him, sit next to him, be his friend. His natural leadership drew people toward him like a magnet. The instructors often used him as an example. "Now look at Benjamin," one of them said. "He is what a real leader looks like: intelligent, compassionate, and humble." Maria sat quietly at the back of the room, watching. Her heart burned with frustration. Maria had always been the center of attention back home. But here, in this training camp, no one cared about her last name. No one whispered about her father's wealth or her beauty. All eyes were on Benjamin. And the worst part? Benjamin didn't even seem to notice her struggles. During breaks, people crowded around him, asking for advice. During meals, he was always engaged in deep conversations with trainers and fellow educators. Maria felt invisible. Back in Nyarukunda, Benjamin had always been beneath her. Now, she was the one in his invisible. One evening, after a long day of training, Maria found Benjamin sitting alone, reading under a tree. She took a deep breath and walked up to him. "You're too busy for your own people now," she said, forcing a smile. Benjamin looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Maria folded her arms. "I mean, you've barely spoken to me since we got here." Benjamin sighed. "Maria, this is a chance of a lifetime. I want to make the most of it." She wanted to tell him how much it hurt to be ignored. But instead, she just said, "I hope you remember who was there before all this fame." Then she walked away. Benjamin watched her go, confused and uneasy. He didn't realize it yet, but Maria's jealousy was growing. And jealousy is a dangerous thing. Benjamin was a diamond in the rough. Just the first week in Dallas, they were taught about grooming. He went into Town Row, buy perfumes, good lotion, and roll on. Maria's words lingered in his mind after she walked away. She was right. He had been too caught up in the work. It wasn't that he was ignoring her. He was just overwhelmed by the responsibilities. But if Maria felt left out, then others might feel the same. He had to find ways of identifying potential and talent so that everyone would be utilized in areas they could serve and get fulfilled. That night, Benjamin made a decision. He needed to be a leader who uplifted others, not just excelled alone. And Maria, she was too talented to be sidelined. The next morning, Benjamin approached Maria during breakfast. "I want you to lead the morning devotions from now on," he said. Maria looked up, surprised. "Me?" "You're a great singer and a natural leader," Benjamin said. "People listen when you speak. This is your time to shine." Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time since arriving, she felt valued. That morning, as she led worship, her voice echoed through the training hall. The instructors nodded in approval. The other trainees sang along with energy. Maria had found her place, working side by side. Benjamin didn't stop there. He drafted Maria and others' hymn, and Nompumelelo discovered into key committees that oversaw different activities, from organizing community outreach projects to helping plan the final graduation ceremony. Maria was now at the heart of the training program. She worked side by side with Benjamin, and for the first time, she understood his work ethic. 16-hour days, no shortcuts. There was no room for laziness. Maria had never worked this hard before, but she felt alive, respected, seen. Most importantly, she was spending more time with Benjamin. Benjamin, Maria, and Nompumelelo. While Maria handled devotions and community engagement, Benjamin continued to lead the training alongside his vice chairperson. Nompumelelo, with the supervision of their instructors, being leaders of leaders meant they were also trained after everyone else on how to be leader of other leaders. They were taught how to delegate duties, visionary leadership, and a lot of other nuggets about leadership. It was not child play, it was just like a military camp. Nompumelelo was a powerful speaker, a brilliant strategist, and just as hardworking as Benjamin. She challenged him, pushed him to think bigger, and together, they executed every task flawlessly. The instructors were beyond impressed. This is the most disciplined, dedicated group of peer educators we've ever worked with, they announced during a briefing. And Benjamin, Maria, and Nompumelelo? They are in a league of their own. Maria smiled proudly. She was finally getting recognized. She was finally standing beside Benjamin, not behind him. And the best part? They were closer than ever. The training camp had been more than just an experience. It had been a transformation. Benjamin had gone from a small-town boy with dreams to a national icon. Everywhere he went, officials, CEOs, and foreign delegates took notice. Then came the biggest news of all. One of the country's top telecommunications companies approached him privately. When your one-year tour as national chairman is done, the director said, "We want you on our leadership team." Benjamin could barely believe it. A real job, a future, security. It was everything his family never had. That night, as he sat under the stars, Maria found him lost in thought. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," he said, smiling. "For the first time in my life, everything is right." Maria smiled back. Their bond had deepened. They were in love now, but it was early days. For now, the world was calling. The grand graduation ceremony, the final day of training arrived. The hall was packed. Dignitaries, instructors, fellow trainees, and special guests. At the center of it all stood Benjamin, Maria, and Nompumelelo. They had been the heartbeat of the training camp. Now it was time for one last speech. Benjamin stepped onto the stage. The moment he saw hundreds of people looking up to him, something inside him shifted. Memories flooded in. His father job, selling their only cow just to survive. Being mocked for dreaming big, working in fields, markets, and streets to make ends meet. Being told he would never amount to anything. Now here he was, a leader, a role model, a success story. The emotions became too much. His hands trembled. His throat tightened. Tears rolled down his face before he could even speak. For a moment, the hall fell silent. Then, applause. Loud, powerful, endless. They weren't laughing at him. They weren't pitying him. They were honoring him, for he had shared his story with them countless times. His struggles, his resolute, the innovations, triumphs, and his compassion for the less privileged. To most of those peer educators, Benjamin was a hero worthy of a standing ovation. Maria didn't hesitate. She stood up, walked onto the stage, and held his hand. The Minister of Youth and Sports, the guest of honor, also rose. He walked onto the stage and placed a firm hand on Benjamin's shoulder. "You have come far, my son," the minister said, "and I promise you, this is just the beginning." The entire hall stood in ovation. Benjamin wiped his tears, took a deep breath, and finally found his voice. And when he spoke, it was the best speech he had ever given. Not that he had given many speeches anyway. Benjamin's one-year reign as national chairman of peer educators had come to an end. His journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. Traveling across the world, representing youth and making a lasting impact. Now a new chapter awaited him. The prestigious telecommunications company he had been promised a job that was ready to welcome him. He would begin as a junior manager, a position many dreamed of but never got at his age. Benjamin was no longer the poor village boy who walked in worn-out clothes. His allowances from his chairmanship had been more than he ever imagined. He had upgraded his wardrobe, made wise investments, built a decent modern house for his family, and, most importantly, secured his future. Maria was always by his side. Their love had deepened. They were inseparable, going on road trips, eating at fancy restaurants, and spending long evenings talking about the future. Maria loved how Benjamin remained humble despite his success. "You're still the same guy who worked 16 hours a day," she teased, leaning on his shoulder. Benjamin chuckled. "Hard work got me here. Why stop now?" Their lover was one written in stars. Everyone who saw them wanted to be in love tomorrow. It was so beautiful. Maria glowed whenever she thought or was with Benjamin. In Nyarukunda, two men stood above all others, Jaraka and Pastor Mackenzie. To the villagers, they were not just leaders, they were saviors. Their philanthropy had transformed the village, making them beloved and respected figures. Even those who did not attend Mackenzie's church still praised his generosity and wisdom. Even those who did not do business with Jaracha still admired his commitment to the people. Jaracha, the wealthy businessman, was more than just a tycoon. He had built a modern marketplace where women and young entrepreneurs could sell their goods, a soccer academy that produced some of the country's most talented players, a scholarship program that helped hundreds of bright but underprivileged students. During droughts, Jaracha would buy food in bulk and distribute it freely. During tough times, he would cancel debts owed to his businesses. To the people, he was not just a businessman, he was a father to the village. Whenever there was a funeral in the village, he wouldn't hesitate to help or pay medical bills for villagers. Many young women in the village had found jobs overseas through his connections. He was indeed a hero by a country mile. The man has a heart of gold, elders would say. Pastor Mackenzie, the shepherd of the people. If Jaracha was the village's provider, then Pastor Mackenzie was its spiritual guide. His megachurch in Nyarukunda wasn't just a place of worship, it was a center of hope. Through his church, he had built schools that provided free education for orphaned and vulnerable children, started a hospital that treated people at little to no cost, created employment opportunities for widows and single mothers. Mackenzie was always present in the community. He visited the sick, presided over weddings, and even attended funerals of the poorest villagers. No one doubted his compassion. No pastor in history has ever done so much for his people. The villagers would say, the people's heroes. For years, Nyarukunda had suffered from famine and poverty, but thanks to Jaracha and Mackenzie, the village could find food and hope. They funded police patrols to reduce theft and violence. They sponsored young talents to study abroad. They built water wells in remote parts of the village. To the people, these men were not just leaders, they were gods among men. Whenever they spoke, the village listened. Whenever they asked for something, the village obeyed. To question them was unthinkable. Benjamin had traveled the world. He had stood in international halls, met important figures, and led thousands. But nothing compared to returning to Nyarukunda, his home. The entire village had been waiting. The church, led by Pastor, the business community, led by Jaracha, had prepared a grand feast. Music filled the air, drums, singing, ululations, the whole village celebrated. Benjamin and Maria could hardly believe it. "We have raised our village flag high," Mackenzie declared, looking at Benjamin and Maria with pride. "You are proof that greatness can come from Nyarukunda." As Benjamin and Maria sat at the high table, the gifts began pouring in. From the church, a brand new suit and a golden watch for Benjamin, a beautiful dress and golden necklace for Maria. From the business community, a donation in Benjamins, named to a village youth program. From the villagers, bags of maize, 10 cows and traditional clothes. Then came the biggest surprise. Jaracha stood up smiling. "For a man of your stature, walking is no longer an option," he said. The crowd gasped as his men pulled a cover off. A 4x4 utility off-road SUV, a shiny blue sedan. "For me?" Benjamin whispered, his hands trembling. "Yes," Jaracha nodded. "A leader must move with dignity." The crowd erupted in cheers. Maria couldn't stop smiling. She leaned closer and whispered, "Look at you, Mr. Chairman." Benjamin chuckled, shaking his head. "I never saw this coming." A promise to Nyarukunda as the celebrations continued. Pastor Mackenzie took the microphone. "We, as elders of this village, have a duty to support our youth." He turned to Benjamin and Maria. "You have fought for this community," he said. "Now we will fight for you." Jaracha stood beside him, nodding. "The crime that has terrorized Nyarukunda for years must end," he declared. The crowd cheered louder. Benjamin, Maria, Pastor Mackenzie continued. "We will stand with you and support all your efforts to fight crime in the best ways possible." Benjamin couldn't believe it. The men he once saw as untouchable figures were now offering their full support. As he looked around, seeing his people celebrate, he realized his life had changed forever. That very night, Maria, the millionaire's daughter, the daughter of a revered pastor, went out to do their own celebration, away from the meddling crowds. As they stood hand in hand, their hearts could even touch each other. Nothing mattered at that particular time but only them. It happened so urgent, like a rolling storm, eroding them from their high moral roots, weaving their flesh and souls like a basket, leaving them only fulfilling one desire they had resisted for far too long. They filled the hunger they had for each other intensely, like hungry lions, like a spark that caused an inferno. Finally, The fire died down as they collapsed in each other's arms. "I will always love you, Ben," Maria finally whispered as she covered her sweating, curvious body. Benjamin's life felt like a dream, a beautiful love story with Maria, a promising career ahead. Benjamin's life felt like a dream, a beautiful love story with Maria, a promising career ahead, and a community that adored him. No one could have predicted the storm that was about to turn his world upside down. A night of peace before the nightmare. It was an ordinary evening, one filled with love and laughter. Maria lay comfortably on Benjamin's chest, her fingers tracing circles on his arm as they watched Gifted Hands. The inspiring story of Ben Carson. Benjamin's little sister, Rachel, was sprawled out on the soft carpet, deeply focused on her homework. The house was warm, peaceful, and full of love. No one had any idea that their world was about to come crashing down. The shocking arrest. A loud bang on the door shattered the moment. Before Benjamin could react, the door burst open, and heavily armed police officers stormed inside. "Hands where we can see them!" one officer shouted. Maria screamed, clinging to Benjamin as confusion and terror filled the room. Benjamin stood up slowly, his heart pounding. "What's going on?" The lead officer flashed a warrant in his face. "Search warrant. We have reason to believe stolen money is hidden in this house." Benjamin's mother rushed in, her face pale. "Officer, there must be a mistake." But within minutes, the police searched the house and found huge sums of money hidden in a room that was barely used. Bundles of cash, evidence of a crime Benjamin had never committed. Rachel burst into tears. Maria collapsed onto the couch, shaking her head in disbelief. "This isn't his." "Benjamin is innocent," Maria cried, her voice breaking. But the police weren't listening. They grabbed Benjamin, forcing his hands behind his back. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the house. Benjamin's mother fell to her knees, holding onto his arm. "My son, please don't take him." Maria was hysterical, begging the officers, "There has to be a mistake." "Check again." But the evidence was clear, and the police had only one job: take Benjamin away. But the walk of shame. The entire village gathered outside, watching in shock as Benjamin was led away in handcuffs. Whispers filled the air. How could Benjamin do such a thing? We all thought he was a role model. Maybe we never really knew him. Maria ran after the police van, screaming, "I love you, Benjamin! I will fight for you!" But the van sped away, taking Benjamin into the darkness of the night. His bright future had turned into a nightmare. The walls of Chikurubi maximum security prison felt like they were alive, breathing in the hopes and dreams of the men trapped inside. Benjamin sat on a rusty bunk, his head in his hands. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since his world fell apart. His future was bright, a new job, a community that loved him, and most importantly, Maria. Now, he was just another prisoner in an orange jumpsuit, accused of a crime he never committed. His mother was struggling, selling their last goat to pay bribes, hoping someone would help her son. The UN had lawyers fighting his case, but the legal system was slow. And Maria? He hadn't heard from her since his arrest. Rumors said her father locked her away after she caused a scene at the police station. Every day felt the same. The clang of steel doors, the smell of rotten food, the whispers of danger in every corner. And then, one day, a stranger changed everything. During yard time, Benjamin sat alone on a bench, staring at the dusty ground. A shadow fell over him, and a thin man with a long scar over his eyebrow sat next to him, lighting a cigarette. "You're Yonga, the peer educator." Benjamin didn't bother looking up. "Not anymore." The man exhaled a cloud of smoke. "They framed you, Jaracha and Mackenzie." Benjamin's head snapped up. "What?" The man, Jameson, smirked. "You think your arrest was random?" Benjamin narrowed his eyes. "Why should I believe a criminal?" Jameson leaned in, his voice low. "I used to work for Jaracha. I know how he operates. Your arrest was planned." The shocking truth. Over the next few days, Jameson revealed the ugly truth. Jaracha and Mackenzie weren't heroes. Their wealth came from cash heists. Armored trucks were hijacked, their drivers killed, and the money disappeared. Cattle rustling. Entire herds were stolen from farmers, and the meat was sold in Jaracha's butcheries. Drug trafficking. Huge. Concerts and church gatherings were used as fronts to distribute drugs. The church. Pastor Mackenzie's megachurch was secretly laundering money through fake charities. "They don't just rob people, Benjamin," Jameson said. "They own the police, the judges, even some of the prison guards. That's why you're here." Benjamin shook his head in disbelief. "No, Jaracha donated money to my family. He helped the village." Jameson laughed bitterly. "That's how they work. They make you trust them, then they destroy you." Then Jameson dropped the biggest bombshell. "They don't just want you in prison, they want Maria too." Jameson slid a smuggled phone through the prison bars. Watch this. On the screen, a secret video showed Jaraka and Mackenzie talking. The next morning, a guard threw a newspaper into Benjamin's cell. The headline made his blood run cold. Pastor's daughter to wed business Sion. The photo showed Maria standing beside Kafasi, Jaraka's son. Her eyes were hollow. She looked broken. The caption read, "Love triumphs amidst scandal." Benjamin roared in fury, slamming his fists into the concrete wall. Jameson watched calmly. "Now do you believe me?" That night, Benjamin sat in the darkness. "What do you want from me?" Jameson's teeth gleamed. "You have the UN watching. I have proof. Together we burn them." Benjamin hesitated. "Why help me?" Jameson's voice hardened. "They took my daughter. She's 16. They forced her into their drug dens. Get her out and I'll help you." Benjamin stared at him. A man who had once worked for the devil, now bargaining for redemption. Jameson revealed that a prison guard was on their side. His sister had been murdered in one of Jaraka's illegal butcheries. He wanted revenge. "He'll smuggle out the evidence," Jameson said. "But you have to survive until trial." Benjamin soon realized that survival wouldn't be easy. One evening, in the prison showers, a huge inmate cornered him. "Jaraka sends his regards," the man growled, pulling out a knife. Benjamin fought with everything he had. He jabbed his thumbs into the man's eyes. He kicked his knee, sending him stumbling. He bit his arm, drawing blood. Guards rushed in, dragging them apart. The inmate spat blood onto the floor. "Next time you die," Jameson patched up Benjamin's wounds later. "They're scared. You're close to the truth." Weeks later, Benjamin was summoned to the warden's office. Sitting across from him was Ms. Kumalo, a UN investigator. "We traced the stolen money," she said. "It was deposited into your family's home by Jaraka's men. We have some who are willing to sing." Benjamin gritted his teeth. "So you can clear my name?" Ms. Kumalo nodded. "But we need Maria to testify against her father Mackenzie." Benjamin froze. "What about Maria? If I fight them, they'll hurt her." Ms. Kumalo leaned forward. "We'll extract her, but only if she works with us. And you, Mr. Jonga, you have to come work with us. When you're free." Benjamin couldn't believe that he would be free after he had lost hope in this dungeon. The walls can eat you alive. That night, Benjamin stared at the moon through the prison bars. To fight meant risking Maria's life. To surrender meant letting evil win. He clutched the smuggled phone, playing the video of Mackenzie's betrayal again. "No one challenges us again." Benjamin's jaw tightened. "I challenge you," he declared with boldness. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with tension as the judge adjusted his glasses. Then, the gavel struck. "Not guilty." Gasps, cheers, outrage. Benjamin stood frozen as his shackles fell away. UN officials nodded in approval. Journalists scribbled furiously. Villagers who had traveled 150 kilometers to Hararian solidarity erupted in celebration. But Jaraka's henchmen, scattered in the crowd, exchanged dark glances. Ms. Kumalo, the steely UN investigator, gripped Benjamin's arm. "They'll come for you. The perfect time for them to strike is now." Benjamin wasn't listening. His mind was already on the next move. The Devil's Vault. Jameson had been waiting. As soon as Benjamin walked towards him to bid farewell, he shoved a crumpled map into Benjamin's hands, coordinates near a disused mine outside Nyarukunda. Gold bars, 12 of them, stolen during a heist. "Use the money wisely," he muttered. "Use it for the good and fight for my release here so I can help you to free our people in Nyarukunda." Benjamin frowned. "Why give me this?" Jameson's voice was steel. "Because my daughter is still in their brothels. Gold buys freedom." Benjamin hesitated for a while how he could use proceeds of crime to fight for justice. But anyway, the means justified the end. Benjamin nodded. It wasn't just about Jameson's daughter. It was about dismantling the empire that had enslaved so many. The church bells tolled as Benjamin rolled into Nyarukunda. It was Sunday service. Maria's voice carried through the open doors, singing a hymn Mackenzie had written. "Blessed are the obedient." Benjamin walked in through the door that faced the pulpit. She stood at the pulpit, draped in a white lace dress, gaunt, hollow. Her voice wavered as their eyes met. The microphone slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a thud. "Ben!" she choked. Kafasi lunged to grab her wrist, but Maria tore free, stumbling down the aisle. The congregation erupted in whispers. Pastor Mackenzie stood at the altar, eyes cold. He picked up the mic and continued with the song in a very passionate way. The choir answered, and the situation was contained. Benjamin caught Maria as she collapsed into him. Her whispered words were a blade to his heart. "I'm pregnant. Your child. Kefasi knows. He never touched me. I was just his trophy wife." All those words rushed out of her mouth, like waters from a dam with broken walls amid. the loud noise from the speakers in the auditorium. "It is well, my love, I am here now. Every little thing will be fine," he reassured him before they were whistled away by a group of ushers and security men. Benjamin's first act after selling the gold was to funnel $500,000 into securing Jameson and his crew's release. They know Jaracha's veins better than anyone. Jameson emerged from prison, gaunt but grinning. He clasped Benjamin's arm like a brother. "Time to return the favor, Chairman." His crew, former drivers, accountants, and hitmen, disappeared into Jaracha's empire within days, posing as loyalists. From the inside, they leaked sensitive intel, drug routes, slaughterhouse locations, money laundering records hidden within church ledgers. The empire had cracks. They just needed the right pressure. The poisoned truth. Jameson was a master of deception. He doctored security footage to show Pastor Mackenzie sneaking into Jaracha's mansion at night, lingering too long in Amina Jaracha's bedroom. Then, he leaked it directly to Jaracha's private server with a single message: "Your shepherd loves your flock too much." Jaracha erupted. At dawn, he stormed into Amina's room, dragging her into the garden where Mackenzie knelt. Jaracha pressed a pistol to his temple. "You godless snake. I trusted you. I made you, and it wasn't enough you still wanted my wife." Mackenzie's voice was a desperate rasp. "Wait!" A single gunshot silenced him. Amina screamed. "He was confessing sins, not sleeping with me." Jaracha turned the gun on her. "Liar!" 2 shots, 2 bodies. Jameson intercepted Jaracha at the crossroads, flanked by villagers armed with machetes and smartphones. "Going somewhere." Jameson smirked, tossing a USB drive at Jaracha's feet. Jaracha picked up his phone. The screen was a death sentence. Trending, photo 1. Jaracha executes wife and pastor in love triangle rage. 4M views. Trending number 2. Footage of his slaughterhouses, child trafficking dens, and Mackenzie's money laundering. Jaracha's face twisted in horror. "You framed me." Jameson lit a cigarette. "No, we just showed the world who you really are." The mob erupted. Farmers whose cattle were stolen. Mothers whose sons had overdosed at Jaracha's festivals. Orphans Mackenzie had saved only to exploit. They dragged Jaracha toward a gasoline-soaked pyre. "Burn him," they chanted. "Burn the devil." Benjamin crashed through the crowd, shielding Jaracha with his body. "No, if we kill him, we're no better." The mob hesitated. "He deserves hell." A woman screamed. Benjamin's voice was steel. "Then let the courts send him there. We are not executioners. We are justice." Jaracha, bloodied, broken, was dragged away in chains. Jaracha, sentenced to life without parole after overwhelming evidence. Kafasi, received 40 years in prison, convicted of drug trafficking and murder. Jameson disappeared with his rescued daughter, leaving Benjamin a note: "Gold brought us freedom, now go and lead." Jaracha's seized assets were used to rebuild the village. The church, under a young reformist pastor, became a sanctuary for survivors. Benjamin stood at the hilltop, watching the sun rise over Nyarukunda.